Have you ever taken what you thought was a great landscape photo, only to find that when you got home and looked at the image on your computer, the photo wasn't quite as great as you thought it was? You know the scene looked beautiful, you were there, but somehow the photo you took just looks a bit dull and uninteresting. Well, how does that happen? Well, let me give you a little clue. It's not the camera. I have with me for this film Colin Mill, who, as well as judging photography competitions, is also a wonderful landscape photographer. His images are stunning, and in fact some of them are even better than mine. I know. It doesn't seem humanly possible, does it? Anyway, we're going to walk through some of his images, and Colin's going to share with us how he created them and how he manages to bring out the drama and impact within the scenes. Now, you may recall I've done a video like this before, but this one will be a bit more in depth and will be including more of the technical details. So, Colin, before we start, just give us a little bit of your background in photography.
Okay, I've been taking photographs now for probably about 25-30 years. Started off obviously in film, progressed my way through medium formats to digital like I'm taking now, and primarily I've been a landscape photographer almost all that time.
That's your preferred subject?
Preferred subject. I don't have to talk to people, don't have to direct people.
That's true, yeah.
I'm not in control of the lighting, but that's the way I like it. I like the wildness of it, the fact that you're catching something natural. Rather than manufacturing something, as you do in a studio.
Sure. And what equipment do you use? We'll go through the equipment in detail later on, but what manufacturer?
I use primarily Canon.
Yeah.
And I've worked my way up, and I've got a stable of L series lenses now.
Great.
And so the quality is fantastic.
Okay. Well, let's look at some of the images then.
Fantastic. So this is on my way to work. We'd had a flawless snow the previous night, so I knew that there was going to be something to be had. My heart sank a little as I was driving to this location because of the cloud cover that you can see. But once I'd put my boots on, climbed over the fence and waded through the field.
You actually had to climb over a fence to get to it?
You had to climb over a fence. You've got to be careful in these. Farmers don't like you essentially trespassing on their land, but provided you're careful and you're respectful of their property, once they find you on their land and you talk to them, they're normally, 9 times out of 10, more than happy for you to be there, so long as you're not doing any damage to the crop or anything.
Right.
The hedgerow on the right hand side there is literally the hedgerow that borders the road, so they've got a main road going just to the right of that. But to all intents and purposes, this is a country view. The focal point for me was the tree up in the top right hand side, and I was just fortunate that the sunlight was in a suitable position, that it didn't fight for attention with the tree, and it provides some lovely raking light.
Yeah.
This is a recurring theme in most of my pictures. I love trees. Trees can be so evocative of various moments, and also you can get them in singles or multiples. And this is a very simple composition. Simple compositions seem to work best if you limit the amount of information that's in a picture. Then the less the viewer has to look at, the better it looks and the more impact it has. And so this is just purely a lead-in line from the left-hand side, ending on the tree, which is just emerging from the mist. The mist had lifted enough that I got some colour in the sky, a nice wide viewpoint, a little bit of colour in the lower left-hand side to balance up with the blue on the right. And there we have it.
And you've obviously used a fifth of a second, a slow shutter speed, so you must be using a tripod.
I tend to use a tripod for all my landscapes, mainly because it slows you down in the taking. And so you're not rushing, and you're considering the viewpoint, you're considering the composition more, because you're having to slow down and work with a tripod. This is another recurring theme. I love sunrises, probably in preference to sunsets, actually. And if you look at the time setting on this one, this is taken middle of June, or the end of June rather, just before 3:30 in the morning.
You got up really early in the morning.
I was actually parked on the beach for this one. I slept in the car overnight. This is up in Northumberland.
That's dedication.
Well, you got to be there, otherwise you wouldn't have seen this fantastic light. So a lot of getting the atmosphere in a picture is about being there at the right time. If you want sunrise shots in the middle of June, then that means they're getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning to be there. But in order to balance the light emitting from the sun and illuminating the sky, I had to use a neutral density filter, a graduated neutral density filter. And if memory serves, at this point it was a 3-stop neutral density filter, just to balance the light appearing in the sky with the foreground. Yeah.
Sure.
Now this is actually taken on the same day, and as you see from the time mark here, it was probably taken about 30 minutes later than the previous one. So the sun was well and truly on its way into the sky. We'd lost that golden light, or the reddy golden light, but there was plenty of pale golden lights still flooding the scene. This is slightly back from the beach a little bit, looking at the sand dunes with the castle on the right hand side there, and you just got this lovely raking light. The sun is still low enough that it's creating some beautiful lengthy shadows and some beautiful textures in the grass and on the castle itself.
And you've got quite a low angle there, haven't you? As with the first one with the snow, it's quite a low.
Yes, in this respect, you're emphasising the foreground. The focal point is the castle in the background, but you want to emphasise the texture and pattern in the foreground, and so a low viewpoint is beneficial to this one. This is back to the same tree that was in the second photograph. It's just a slightly wider view, taken slightly further back. In fact, this is one of my new lenses. This is a 17mm lens that I've recently purchased.
And you're shooting at f/16 as well,
shooting at f/16.
Most of the other shots as well, I noticed.
Yes. When you get a lens, it's best to run a few tests of it and find out what its optimum aperture is. It's not always best to open it to close it right down to f/32 or f/22, whatever the smallest aperture is, because you get something called diffraction, and it's the bending of light, and it causes fuzzy edges, and it actually looks out of focus when it's not. So a few tests with a new lens to find out where the sweet spot is. And with this lens, I found out that anywhere between f11 and f16 was fine. Produced lovely, tack-sharp images and fantastic photographs. Again, to balance the foreground and the sky, I've used a 2-stop neutral density filter this time, just to reduce some of the brightness in the clouds. This is another tree on the way into work. In fact, the same field as last time. This was a heavy frost rather than snow. But I quite like in this one the gradual introduction of the blue colour in the sky, the hazy nature of the clouds behind the tree. You normally hear when people talk about composition about using the rule of thirds, which is fine. When it works fantastically. But the rule of thirds isn't always applicable, and in this instance what I've done is I've placed the tree almost central within the image. We've got a lead in from the left hand side, we've got a minor lead in from the right hand side, both pointing towards the tree in the middle. The way the composition works, the photograph almost runs in thirds, but the main focal point of the image is centred on the image, and I think in this respect it works well. Taking landscapes doesn't always mean taking the wide view. What we have here is a detailed shot of a waterfall in North Wales, and what I'd done, as you will see from the data, was zoomed into 190mm on my 75-300mm zoom lens, and just isolated a small portion of the waterfall itself. Again, it's the camera is tripod mounted, a 39-second exposure. You wouldn't be able to handhold that one, but what it does, it gives you this lovely milky feel to the water. Now, some people will say that that's not realistic. Well, photos don't have to be photorealistic or real to real life. What you're producing here is what you felt at the moment, what you interpreted of the scene at the moment.
And the light is beautiful there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the light's fantastic. Now, this is actually 3 shots stapled together, or stitched together, shall I say. This is Lower Slaughter in the Cotswolds, and I just set up the camera on the tripod to photograph the scene when these 3 horses wandered into the scene.
You got lucky.
I got lucky. Beautiful colours on the jackets. Quite nice separation as well between the three horses, so they're not all grouped together and confusing things. But the scene itself was nicely balanced without the horses, but the inclusion of the horses just adds a little extra element. This is a sunset shot, and a place I visited for the first time last year. I'd done a little bit of research before I went to find out in which direction the sun sets and from which vantage point would be best to photograph this. And driving down, it was drizzling, and in fact at some points it was even raining quite hard. But once I got to the lavender farm down in Hitchin, the rain cleared, the clouds started to clear, and all I had to do was just wait for the sun to go down. And I think from this little excursion I ended up with about 30 or 40 different images, all including the sun.
Right, and this is using quite a wide angle zoom lens here.
Yeah, quite a wide
end as
quite
well.
a wide lens again.
Yeah.
To try and get in as much of that beautiful sky as I could.
Yeah, and the starburst, I guess, is because you've used quite a small aperture. Or have you put a filter?
No,
on
there's no filter on that.
Mm.
The only filters I do tend to use are the graduated neutral density filters and occasionally a polarizing filter.
So that starburst is because
that starburst is absolutely natural because of the aperture, the
small aperture.
Using. Yeah.